I work at the National Library of Scotland, based at the Kelvin Hall in Glasgow. My main job is as a curator, and I work in the moving image part of the library's collections. So I work day to day with the catalogue. I help put all the films onto the online catalogue. I help to describe them, and also engage a lot with people that want to know about the films, so inquiries that come in, or just generally trying to promote the collections to people and make them enjoy them. I've worked in archive over 20 years and I'm amazed at how people react to the archive. It's quite a personal reaction and enthusiasm, and they engage with particular things that mean something to them. It's certainly not a dull, old stuffy archive. It's a live thing that's developing all the time. The Scottish Film Archive in particular is very strong in amateur film. We've got a big tradition of amateur filmmaking from the Scottish Amateur Film Festival that started up. We've got educational films and also just people making films for pleasure. It fits a lot of the collecting policy that we have in terms of collecting people's lives, the social history, places people worked, the way they dressed, the way they spoke, the cars that they drove. It's all there in the film and it's all live to experience. Amateur film is not just people's wedding films or things like that, which are very personal. It's also creative work, so experimental work, things that you wouldn't quite expect, people have a passion for, and I think that's the beauty of it as well, that people have that time to do as a hobby, and they've made these films as a special record of their lives. With amateur film you get the record of events, but sometimes they're just as a byproduct. The amateur film is also just people recording their lives, but in the background you've got maybe Paisley Jail or something. You spy things in the background that people didn't really expect would be important, but to us now, a lot later, that is a record of how the times changed and how people used to be. So I just find it amazing. You could spend hours just engaging with it. We don't have time to really research every film in great detail. So a lot of the time with amateur film or collections that come in, we get the donor or the person that's giving us it to really give us as much information either verbally or on paper as we can, because they know the family in the film. They might remember being there, for example. With this film, it was just one example of a really interesting film. It was about 10 minutes long and it was called Anchor Pensioners 1965. And honestly, I knew it was a hall somewhere. I thought it was Anchor Mills in Paisley from the title. But apart from that, we didn't really know what was going on at all. So instead of me trying to work this out, which I probably could have if I'd really tried and done a lot of research, but what I did was I threw the film out onto the online catalogue and I engaged with some of the Facebook groups in Paisley that I knew. I just said, would somebody know about this or recognise people in the film? And I had a really brilliant reaction immediately. And for that 10 minutes worth of work, the amount of information I got back was fab. And we realised it was the canteen down at Anchor Mills, and it was a Christmas party, we think. And I had people that used to bake the cakes for the Christmas party getting in touch and saying, I remember that. And they used to go away with a bag of scones at the end of the night. And it was actually, I think, for the mill lasses. It was kind of they were pensioners now, but they were still getting a thank you from the company. But I think also what's really interesting about that film is the social history behind it. Like, we found out that the canteens were separated in the work. So the men went to a separate canteen and they had a drinks cabinet and they had their sort of lunch separately from the women because they were the workers. So there's a huge amount of history behind the context behind a film like that I think if you engage with the people that know about it, you can get so much out of it. It was a room full of women with rainmacks and coats, and they were having their afternoon tea and having a real chat, and I wish I had the soundtrack to hear what the gossip was. But you know, it's just, for what seemed a fairly mundane film, it was actually really interesting. My pleasure comes from identifying things like the date or the place or the people in the film, especially with silent film. You don't know, you don't have a soundtrack, so you're visually saying, oh, that car's registration is such and such, it must be after this date or something. So there's a whole host of kind of detective work that goes on. But I think also I think I would be happy when I can then put it online, because that is satisfying to be able to share it, and that's what it's all about. It's not about archivists keeping things in cupboards and only certain people can see them. It's about sharing it, and as a National Library, sharing it for free. And if people want to come to Kelvin Hall, they'll see a lot more than they would online at their house. But at their house, you'll see 2,800 films at the moment. So there is a lot to explore, and I think that's a good day at the office for me, is getting that, pushing that content out and seeing where it goes, and possibly getting some feedback from people and engaging and making it better.